Hello and welcome to the Georgina Chamber of Commerce 2022 Municipal Election Debates on Rogers TV. My name is Dave Solossi and I will be the moderator for this debate. The debates are being held in partnership with Rogers TV and the Georgina Chamber of Commerce. During this debate, you'll hear from the candidates, three of the candidates, who are asking for your vote on October 24th to be the next York Region District School Board Trustee. I will introduce our candidates in a moment, but first I'd like to cover the ground rules. The order in which the candidates will be introduced and provide opening statements was determined by a random draw prior to the program. This order will be reversed during the closing statements. Each candidate will be given 1 minute for opening remarks, 1 minute for closing statement, and a minute to answer each of the questions. A timekeeper is here in the studio to signal to the candidates a 30-second and 10-second cue. If a candidate hears something they would like to challenge, they will raise their hand and be recognized by myself before the next question is asked. They will have time to challenge the statement, and rebuttal opportunities will be provided as time allows. We're looking forward to a respectful and fulsome discussion, and I encourage everyone to make the most of the time we have together. Now, I'd like to introduce the candidates with us here in the studio today. Starting on my far left is Carolyn Butterworth. Hi, Carolyn. In the center, Jeremy Smith. And to my right, Cynthia Cordova. Cynthia Cordova. A fourth candidate, Mark Schlotzhauer, was unable to join us today, so won't be taking part in the debates. Now, I'd like to begin with the opening remarks. At this point in time, you each have 1 minute, and based on our draw prior to the debate, we're starting with Carolyn Butterworth. Carolyn, please, 1 minute.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Carolyn Butterworth, and I'm pleased to be part of this discussion. I feel that it is most important for you, the voters, to know that I will be a leader, an advocate, and representative for your children's education. I recently retired after a 32-year teaching career here in York Region District School Board. I've taught in schools in Georgina and East Gwillimbury, and I've raised 2 children in the YRDSB system, so I feel that I can represent the many respectives based on these experiences. There are 4 components that make up my vision if I'm elected as your trustee. I will use my perspective as parent and teacher to guide policy making. I've seen firsthand how policies have affected our students, especially over the last 2 years. I will be your voice to ensure that the board's policies and budgets reflect our students' well-being and achievements, and I will help students and families navigate the public school system as it can be overwhelming. I want to be a part of the selection of the new director. We need to ensure this director understands the uniqueness, complexities, and the needs of the North. And lastly, and most importantly, thank you.
Now we'll go with the opening remarks from Jeremy Smith. Candidate Jeremy Smith, you have 1 minute.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremy Smith, and I'm seeking your vote for the important role of York Region District School Board Trustee for Georgina and East Gwillimbury. Georgina currently has a population of around 50,000 people and is projected to increase to 71,000 by 2051. How does this information translate into this year's municipal election of 2022? The building blocks for future economic growth must include planning that will provide the educational infrastructure to accommodate this growth now. To facilitate this population growth, we need to get all the stakeholders in education, from students, parents, community groups, and local business, involved in civic activities that will reconnect our schools to the local communities in a meaningful way. To do this, we must make sure that parents, students, education workers are understood, accommodated, and supported. Only then can we move forward after 2 years of pandemic disruptions. My name is Jeremy Smith, and I'm prepared to make this happen.
And now, trustee candidate Cynthia Cordova, 1 minute for opening remarks.
Thank you. I am Cynthia Cordova, the elected public school trustee for all of Georgina. This municipal election, we have expanded our boundaries to now include Georgina and East Gwillimbury. This increase and enhancement area will allow me to continue to ensure that the best education for our children are there. For the past 5 years, I have put students first in all my decisions at the board, promoted equitable outcomes, supported our 127,000 students, staff, and 200 schools. I have also ensured accountability of our $1.5 billion budget. I have held many leadership roles, such as the director of OPSPA, as well as the vice chair, the board chair, the first in Georgina, may I add. Outside of my roles, I do work for the Salvation Army homeless sector for York and Durham. I am the chair of the Jericho Youth Services, volunteer, and sat on many committees. I am a mother of 2 amazing teenagers who attend our system. I know firsthand the importance of experience and involvement it takes to be a trustee.
Okay, we're going to move to the question part of the program now. And the first question I'm going to be asking Jeremy Smith to answer first. School boards have had their taxation powers removed by the province. All substantial negotiations with the education workers' unions is conducted by the province centrally. All curriculum matters are decided and distributed by the Ministry of Education centrally. Do local school boards have any more relevance in our modern time? Should they even continue to exist?
The answer to your question, Dave, is yes, they still have relevance. If you go back to the Mike Harris years when the dismantling of local involvement and local autonomy happened in education, I really do think that if we get all stakeholders involved in the educational progress, we can bring back the autonomy, A, to trustees, and to B, to the communities. Unless we connect parents, students, community groups to this approach, we're not going to go anywhere. And we need to start with advocating for ourselves. First of all, having a dedicated trustee for Georgina, a dedicated trustee for East Gwillimbury, so that parents have a say in how the board is being run. Only when that is done can we move forward. And we have to get local taxation powers back into the hands of the board so they can develop educational programs targeted for local schools in Georgina and East Gwillimbury.
Cynthia Cordova, I put the same question to you. Do school boards have any more relevance today?
Absolutely. And I do agree. A lot of it is a complex issue through the ministry mandates, and it is paramount that the school boards implement this, evaluate it, research it, ensure that it is putting our best interest of our students first. And for the foremost, if that is not happening, it is our job as the Board of Trustees and our governance, as operations, to bring forth those concerns so that the ministry can look at it and evaluate. We do have reserves, and we can implement those reserves for special programs and circumstances that require. We can advocate at the ministry level. So I do believe that the role is very important to continue to have.
Carolyn Butterworth, the same question to you. Do school boards have any relevance today?
Well, I agree with both of the candidates. Absolutely, they do. And I actually don't have much more to add to that because they both raised some excellent points. It is very important that each board has a say in terms of funding and so on to provide for their unique needs. I mean, every board is different. You look at the regions even within York Region, Georgina is very different from Markham. So it would be nice if the boards had a little more autonomy so that they did have more of a say in terms of how their budgets are used and how much money is allocated. And I agree with Jeremy that it would be nice if we did have, more of a say in advocating for ourselves, and that the ministry actually will take that into account. So yes, I agree. Thank you.
Good. Let's move on to a second question. For this one, I'm going to ask Trustee candidate Cynthia Cordova to answer first. What do you believe is the #1 issue facing our public educational system today? Why?
Well, I believe it continues to be ensuring that we put students first on every decision. And this is what I hear continuously throughout my 5 years as a trustee, and continues to hear when I approach the doors from parents and teachers. If we have the common goal of continuously putting students first, then we can support in the education system. I think it's very important that we do that.
Carolyn Butterworth? With #1 issue.
Yeah, #1 issue, I think, is addressing all of the needs of our students. We have so many needs in terms of just looking at what happened over the last 2 years from the pandemic. And and just the differences in how students access their education from hybrid to virtual learning to those who are in class. There was a lot of inequities in that. So I think now that we're back in school full-time, face-to-face for most of us, I know there's some who are still doing virtual learning, I think it's addressing all of those needs, and that's our Indigenous children, that's our BIPOC, that's our LGBTQ, that's our students with special needs, making sure we have the supports and resources in place to ensure equity for all. Thank you.
And Jeremy Smith, the question is about number one issue.
I'm going to answer it in two parts. Number one, obviously, is the mental health of our students. And I can only hope that this year that the York Region Board of Education establishes benchmarks throughout the year to evaluate the process of our students, of our teaching staffs, and our parents who've had to put up with basically a year and a half of hybrid learning and 2 years of pandemic planning. However, the biggest issue I see right now, if we're going to solve all this, is we somehow have got to solve the funding formula here in Ontario. The GSNs are woefully under budgeted. We know that the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives has said that education since 2017, the direct payments to school boards has decreased by $800 per student. And the government now is granting all these special wish lists of things they want to send out to the various boards. Wrong way to go. We need to reestablish the GSN so that school boards can actively fund local school initiatives.
Thank you. For the next question, I'm going to start with Carolyn Butterworth to answer first. With the change in boundaries for the York Region District School Board, how will you be able to support both East Gwillimbury and Georgina schools?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm retired. I retired after 32 years of teaching, so I don't have anything else on my plate right now. Other than this, I hope to have this. So I have basically a full-time schedule that is open that I can allocate to both East Gwillimbury and Georgina. I've lived in East Gwillimbury my whole life. I have taught in Georgina. I have family living in Georgina. I'm here on a regular basis, so I'm well aware of things that are going on in the community. I'm prepared to dedicate my full-time amount, and hopefully that will be sufficient. Thank you.
Yeah. Jeremy Smith, the question is to you about the change in boundaries.
When it comes to boundary change, I think when the York Region Board of Education put out the feelers to parents, should be a good idea to change the boundaries. I think linking East Gwillimbury to Georgina, in my opinion, is a mistake. I think Georgina and East Gwillimbury should be separate. However, what I intend to do, like Carolyn, I'm a retired teacher after 33 years in education. I will dedicate myself to the service of the needs to both communities. I will do this on a daily basis. And what I hope to do, though, is get out there and get everyone talking. And I also hope to get, and I see this when I was out for a walk this weekend, I want to see kids being happy, playing with each other, out in the school grounds, and I want parents out there watching them and being engaged also. So I'm going to dedicate myself to this role, and I hope that, and I assure Cynthia can attest, it's a full-time job.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Cynthia Cordova, boundary change.
Yes, thank you. I was instrumental with this discussion and advocated, obviously, for Georgina. For the first time in history, for a long time, 17 years, Georgina has always had a one trustee, and being local is important. Being from the far north is important. Understanding the needs of the community, advocating. I have been doing that for 5 years, and pretty much have also been advocating for the needs of all York Region areas, as well as East Gwillimbury in the past 4 years. So I will continue to do that. I think the boundary changes added 41% increase, and it does take a lot of work. So experience is important, knowledge is important, and relationships are important. And I have all of that, and I will continue to set out what I've put forth and continue to watch it grow.
Thank you. And a supplementary? Go ahead, please, Jeremy.
I just want to remind the audience, I'm an East Gwillimbury resident. It took me 15 minutes to get to this location today. I know where Morning Glory Public School is because I've been there as a vice president for the Elementary Teachers Federation of York Region. So I know where everything is. Even though I'm local to East Gwillimbury, Georgina will also become my home. Thank you.
And rebuttal, go ahead, please.
Thank you. And as much as I know that that's important, it really is important to actually live and breathe within the communities and be involved and volunteer and support and understand where the parents are. Driving into the communities is one thing, but experiencing and knowing the community is another.
Thank you. Let's go on to the next question now. I'm going to start with Jeremy Smith on this one. Because we did talk a little bit of allusion to the last couple of years. So reflecting on those last 2 years and what they mean for our students then and ongoing, what is your position on hybrid learning and mandatory online learning?
In short, disastrous. When most school boards were shut down during the first and second wave of the pandemic, there were only about 4 or 5 school boards in Ontario that actually were doing full-time online learning. However, what was presented to parents come this school year for 21-22, everything's fine with hybrid learning, and I'm pretty sure Stephen Lecce sold that to just about everyone in the province. Hybrid learning didn't work. Students became disconnected with their schools, even though they were assigned to classrooms in their school areas. However, hybrid learning does not take the place of direct communication with peers. Kids need to be with each other. They need to look each other in the eyes. They need to talk. They need to communicate. So unless we do this, and I can only hope there's no shutdowns this year, get rid of hybrid learning because it cost the board money for technology and it wasted their reserves.
Thank you. Cynthia Cordova on remote learning, hybrid learning and online learning.
Yes, absolutely. That has been a big experience in regards to what happened and occurred throughout 2 years. That has been challenging. It affected a lot of students, teachers. We advocated at the board, or I advocated at the board, and I believe that we could have done better and we can continue to do better. But we now need to move forward and focus on putting forward the gaps. What do those gaps look like? And what are we going to do with the gaps, with the mental health, the student achievement gaps? All of that needs to be reviewed and looked at. And that is what I intend to do.
Thank you. And let's go to Carolyn Butterworth on remote learning.
Well, I can comment on this firsthand because I was teaching during this, and I agree with Jeremy. It was absolutely a disaster, an organizational disaster. Students had a very hard time coping. There were huge mental health issues. There were lack of resources for teachers. We were coming up with stuff of our own to be able to make this work. Parents were frustrated, and there was huge, pushback to the board in terms of how this was not working, and nobody seemed to be listening. And lots of letters were sent to trustees and to superintendents and stuff, and we got very little feedback and support from our senior management of our board. So I hope we never see this again. Elementary students should not be learning in a hybrid or virtual environment at all. Thank you.
Okay, comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to note that those decisions that were made at the board for next term will not include hybrid learning, based on the experience that's heard and based on the advocacies of the trustees at that table.
Okay, good. And we're going to go ahead to the next question, starting again with you, Cynthia Cordova. Sure. The provincial government has made significant cuts to public education budgets. What will you seek to prioritize in light of these cuts?
Yeah, I think that ensuring that the money that is insured in our reserves, we are one of the healthiest reserved budgets in York Region, is that it focuses on putting students first. It brings the programs to where it's at. I will continue to do that. For the past 2 years, we have not approved the budget for that reason, that programs were being considered to being the ones that are cut. And we advocated very strong at the board to ensure that students were not suffering, resources were not suffering, and we had to dip into our reserves to do that. And what better time to do it when we were going through a crisis of the pandemic.
Carolyn Butterworth, let's go to you on provincial cuts.
Well, definitely, again, I've experienced that firsthand. It basically was, our budgets were slashed right across the board. I would say if we were prioritizing stuff, it would definitely be the mental health of our children. And that's not just handing out a pamphlet saying how you can access mental health resources. It's actually having support staff within the school. We've seen a huge cut in our EAs and child and youth workers. There aren't enough in our schools to help support these students. There's also some issues with equity in terms of those students who don't have access to good Wi-Fi. So I know that's not just a school issue, but those are things that we needed to consider when we're looking at equity for all of our students. So those are the things that I would prioritize for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Jeremy Smith on provincial cuts.
Well, we know that provincial cuts are digging deep into also the pockets of parents. We know that many families are struggling with issues like food security, housing costs. So when they send their kids to school, they want their kids to be in a happy, wonderful place so they can actually learn, so the parents at home can feel good about what they're doing. Mental health is very important. I agree with that fully. But we need some way to make sure that the parents and their situation and what they're going through right now is also supported. And that's where we need to bring in local community groups that even one of our trustees here is very familiar with, helping out parents in the community. Because in the end, the cuts are going to cut deep, they're going to hurt, but we have to make sure everyone, all stakeholders in education are involved and supportive.
Thank you. For this question, we'll start with Carolyn Butterworth. What do you feel is the greatest support you can promote to develop a positive learning environment for our students?
Greatest support. Can you explain a little more? What do you mean by the greatest support?
I don't want to start giving answers necessarily.
I'm just not sure how to answer.
In what way can we create a positive learning environment?
Oh, okay.
The most positive contributions you can make as a trustee.
Absolutely. So first of all, I want to be in the schools. I want to go out. I want to meet parent councils. I want to talk to the students, the youth themselves, to hear what they want, their priorities. And I think if we listen to our youth, we're going to learn a lot. And I'm not saying that we haven't in the past, but it's really important that we listen to them now, especially our marginalized communities. I think having good relationships with our teachers from the top on down and our support staff is huge, because if we have happy people in the classrooms, our kids are going to be happy, and that's what parents want. So I think supporting all of our partners in the school community, I think, is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy Smith, the greatest support you can promote.
I'm a very good listener, and in my 10 years as Vice President of ETFYR, that was my main skill when I went out to schools to solve issues. Very good listener, got all the facts, and before I jumped to any conclusions, recommended anything, I would evaluate the situation. And I think we can also do that at the very school levels. And one group that I think really needs to get involved with that skill set of listening is involving parent councils. They have the ears to the ground on what's going on in schools. So if we can get them to facilitate discussions with administrators, with superintendents, with senior staff of the board, we can solve some of these issues going forward. And as I said, if we can listen, and I mean truly listen to what the concerns are in the community, instead of paying them lip service by the government announcing the catch-up plan, we can do better here in Georgina.
Mm-hmm. Cynthia Cordova, the greatest support you can offer.
Yes, thank you. As you know, the trustee role is quite complex. We're governed by the ministry. We have our governance role, and we have our operations. So the biggest support I can offer to the community is bringing forth their voices, making sure that we're putting students first. But what we can offer in our governance role is to ensuring our leadership, the director, our senior staff, are all in the motion of ethical leadership, all in the motion of communication, and supporting the staff in the operations so that they can pleasantly, positively create an environment that is safe, that's trauma-freed for our students, and that encourages students to be able to feel free to speak and to bring creativity and voices. And I think that advocating alongside those students and parents will be my job, but also ensuring that leadership's in place to do that and overseeing it. Thank you.
We don't have time now for it, I'm sorry, because we have to move now to closing statements. You will each have 1 minute, and we'll do this in reverse order to the opening remarks. So we're starting with Cynthia Cordova. Your closing remarks, please.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to take the time to thank Rogers for allowing this debate to happen and allowing information like this to get out to our voters. It's very important and very valuable. I will continue my role in putting students first. I will ensure that I make the decisions that support your voices at the table and that you're heard for the North and for all of York Region students. I know how difficult and rewarding this job can be, and with that enhancement of the boundaries that we currently have, it's important to ensure that you have experience, relationships, and involvement will continue. To ensure this, I will be helping to continue what I've already set out. Our goal is the same. It's improving education and putting students first. No one can argue with that. So on October 24th, what I'm asking you to do is vote Cordova.
Thank you. Jeremy Smith, you have 1 minute.
My mission statement clearly says students need to recover from the last 2 years of the pandemic education. We need to give students the opportunity to reconnect socially, emotionally with their peers and in their schools. In-person learning and support is needed to make students feel confident in an academic setting and address any mental health concerns that students have faced through the pandemic. Educational funding should support the unique and special needs of all students. I see as the key issues today: health and safety, environmental activism, civic engagement, technology in our schools, and boosting student achievement. If we can address those issues, that will be fantastic. Again, I would also like to thank Rogers. Thank you.
Candidate Carolyn Butterworth, you have 1 minute for your closing remarks.
Okay, well, thank you to Rogers for hosting, and I appreciate the opportunity to participate here. I want to be the York Region District School Board Trustee for East Gwillimbury and Georgina. I retired when I did because of the timing of this election. I feel that I can make a difference because I am passionate about and dedicated to public education. We need someone who understands all sides, and I will definitely advocate for you, and I hope you feel that I am that person for you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, that's all the time we have for today. I want first off to thank the candidates very much for your participation, and I thank the viewers for joining us. We hope these debates will help you to be able to make an informed decision for the election on October 24th. Rogers TV will be repeating all the debates leading up to the election day, to October 24th. Schedules are available on rogerstv.com. We also invite you to tune in on election night for full coverage of the local results. I also want to extend an invitation to you to watch Politically Speaking this month, in which 3 former members of council will discuss the issues in the upcoming municipal elections. I'll be hosting that show. I'm Dave Selassie. Thank you.